And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar. It's Tuesday, November 26th. We've made it through Week 12, people. We're just inching closer and closer to the end of the season as the days go by. Just 5 more weeks left, and we got a pretty full show for you today. We got all the recaps from Week 12 to get through, and we also got a bunch of game previews at the end of the show, because I don't know if you've noticed, Thursday is Thanksgiving. Gobble, gobble, people. So we'll preview all 3 of the games that happen on Thanksgiving at the end of the show. And, of course, we're going to talk about playoff implications, where every team stands as of Tuesday right now, and all that jazz. So before we get into it, I want to mention that we went 10-4 in our picks. We're catching fire, people. We're catching fire at the right time. Right before the postseason is right when a team wants to start getting hot, and that's when we're getting hot. We're in fine form. Let's keep it up. So, let's get into our recap. First off, I think a good place to start would be Detroit at Washington. That barn burner of a game. Dustin Hopkins, the Washington field goal kicker, hits a 39-yard field goal with 20 seconds left to go ahead late in this one, as Washington snaps a 4-game losing streak and wins 19-16. Improves to 2-9 on the year. Good for them. Yay. Good for them. 2-9, baby. Coming up in the world. And the Detroit Lions fall at 3-7-1. This was a sloppy, ugly game. Neither offense played well in this one. Each offense was horrific, but it could really be argued that the Lions offense was the worst looking of the bunch, with Jeff Driscoll, who just looked awful in this game. Went 20 of 33 for 207 yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions though. 3, and that's what really killed the Lions here. The 3 turnovers and got sacked 6 times. Good golly gosh. He also had 9 rushes for 63 yards, but this Washington defense really played good in this game. 4 turnovers, like I mentioned, the 3 interceptions. They also got a fumble in this one. 6 sacks and 16 total points. This might have been the best outing that the Washington defense has had all season long. In all honesty, it's easy to compare because they only have two wins. But bumps. Neither offense played good. Now looking at Washington's offense as well, Driscoll threw 3 interceptions, ugly, and Dwayne Haskins, the Washington quarterback, missed a lot of throws. Dwayne Haskins finished 13 of 29 for 156 yards, 1 interception, and 3 sacks. I was bouncing back and forth between a couple games, and whenever I was watching this one, it just felt like Dwayne Haskins was missing some wide open guys. There were 2 instances, in my opinion, where Dwayne Haskins had a touchdown and he just overshot the guy. One of them was a blatant overthrow where the guy wasn't even covered. The other was, a slight overthrow when a guy was a little bit covered and maybe he doesn't catch it. But off the top of my head, I could count 2 times where Dwayne Haskins had a touchdown and he just whiffed on the throw. So it's showing that there's still room for improvement. But it's just like the Lions just did it to themselves. Even when Dwayne Haskins was missing touchdowns and he didn't play too well and the Washington offense didn't play too well, the Lions did it to themselves. Get this. The Detroit Lions outgained Washington 382 total yards to 242. They outgained them by a plethora and still lost this game. They just did it to themselves. Washington only scored 1 touchdown in this game, to their credit. To the Lions' credit, which, a defense that has been very bad for most of the year, only gave up 1 touchdown, and it was on special teams. The Washington football team had a 91-yard kick return early in second quarter, and the rest of their points came from Dustin Hopkins, their field goal kicker. So it's not like the Lions' defense just, rolled over and let them march up and down on the field on them. They just didn't get a job done on one special teams block, and Washington busted out a kick return. In brutal honesty, not a lot happened in this game. I'm going to be brutally honest with y'all. Hence why Dustin Hopkins was arguably the MVP of the game, the field goal kicker for Washington, as he scored like 9 points in this one. I'm sorry, 12 points. My mistake. So when a field goal kicker is your leading scorer and MVP of the game, that usually means it wasn't a fun game. But I do want to take a quick second to mention Dwayne Haskins, the Washington quarterback, had a bit of an awkward day. On top of not really playing that well in the game, he got his first win as an NFL starter, and I bet that felt great. But before the game, showed up very late. About an hour and 20 minutes before kickoff is when he apparently finally showed up to the stadium. You never want to see that from your starting quarterback. And then during the game, after Washington went ahead and the Lions got the ball back for a couple seconds and then turned it over, there was still some time left on the clock, but Dwayne Haskins was on the sideline celebrating. In fact, he went behind the bench to go take selfies with fans in the stands, and they still need him to come in and kneel the ball down to kill the clock. And they can't find him. So what has to happen? Case Keenum has to come in. He can't find his helmet, but he finally does. Has to come in and kneel it down because Dwayne Haskins is too busy taking selfies with fans. Now, I'm not going to kill the kid for, doing that. He's hyped up. He got his first NFL win with a terrible franchise that is Washington. So I'm not going to kill the kid. He's happy. Let him enjoy the moment. But it was just it wasn't a good look. It really wasn't a good look. And, here's to Dwayne Haskins maybe getting a couple more wins in his career. Once again, Washington wins this one 19-16, and we're moving on to another barn burner. Oh, my goodness. Just one after another. Giants at Bears in Chicago. Chicago wins this one 19-14. Chicago improves to 5-6 on the year. And the poor lowly Giants fall to 2-9 and lost 7 straight. They're in the running for a top 3 draft pick, people. Look out. The Bears outlast the Giants in another sloppy offensive game for both sides. In all honesty, it was both a good and bad game for Mitchell Trubisky, the Bears quarterback. He had 2 touchdown passes in this one. Oh, no, he had 2 touchdowns. My mistake. He had 1 pass and 1 rushing. And there were some throws in there where you see him, where he'll throw an absolute dart. And you're thinking, wow, let's see that more often. And then he follows it up with 2 interceptions. And you're thinking, let's see less of that. So it's a good and bad game. You got a little bit of both. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe that's who Trubisky is. You just got to take the good and the bad with the poor kid. But this game was actually kind of a snooze fest in the first half. Little to nothing happened. It was kind of like a normal game for the Bears where they just don't do anything in the first half. They got a late field goal right before halftime to bring it into 7-3 Giants lead at the half. And you're thinking, okay, this is what we've come to expect from the Bears. Their offense not really showing up in the first half, and they got to claw their way back into it. It's what we've seen the last couple weeks, and if you paid attention to what happens in the third quarter the last couple weeks, the Bears will come out with their hair on fire and start putting up points. And that's what they did in this game. They came out with their hair on fire and looked like dudes on a mission, and they go on a 16-0 run in the third quarter. They scored the 2 touchdowns by Trubisky, and they're rolling. They're up 16-7. No, I'm sorry, 19-7. And they're feeling good about themselves. They're at home. Their defense is good. And this feels like a Bears win. Well, they took their foot off the gas, and on a 4th down play in the fourth quarter, they let Golden Tate scamper into the end zone to make it 19-14. And Daniel Jones gets the ball back late and just can't make anything going with it. Bears defense holds, and Bears are able to tough out a win. But I just want to say, I think we're starting to sense a pattern with the Bears in terms of their offense, and that they're not going to show up for the first half. Those first 2 quarters, they're not going to do anything. But once that third quarter starts, they're a different animal. And they just put up like 14 to 16 points, and that'll either get them back into the game or give them the lead, and they'll just coast on that. Because in the fourth quarter, they didn't do anything. And I think it's an interesting figure. I saw a stat on Monday that ranked the Bears' total points scored in each quarter this season by first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. First quarter, they're one of the bottom 5 offenses in terms of scoring points this season. Second quarter, bottom 5 in terms of scoring points in the second quarter. Third quarter, top 5 in scoring points this season. Are you kidding me? Then the fourth quarter happens. Bottom 5 in terms of scoring points. It makes absolutely no sense why the Bears can suddenly flip a switch in the third quarter but can't do it for the rest of the game. I don't know if it's just because of the halftime adjustments they're making or if they're scheduling plays in the locker room to come out and do better. It just makes zero sense, but it's a rinse, wash, and repeat situation for the Bears every single week, no matter who they play. And you can't fault them because, they won the game. Their offense came out and did some good things. I mean, Allen Robinson, I think he had his first 100-yard receiving day of the season, if I'm looking at these numbers correctly. 6 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown. So, you can't knock the Bears too much. Their offense kind of worked for a game, so that's good. And it could be argued that the Chicago defense really had a big hand in this one as well. They only allowed 14 points. They got 1 sack, but that 1 sack was very important. It was about midway through the third quarter. Daniel Jones gets hit by, I'm not quite sure who hit him. I think it might have been Khalil Mack, but he fumbled the ball. And the Bears recover, and it has them set up in the Giants' red zone. And that ended up leading to the Mitchell Trubisky rushing touchdown. Speaking of the Giants now, they really struggled to protect Daniel Jones all day. They only gave up 1 sack on the day, but it felt like he was getting hit a lot more than that. And guys really struggled to get open. There was nothing really of note from the Giants offense. Saquon Barkley had another quiet day. It's really kind of getting alarming how much of a non-factor Saquon's become. It's really kind of stunning. Jones didn't play that well either. Daniel Jones, the quarterback, went 21 of 36, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 sack, and a fumble. The Giants just aren't playing well. Nothing is going right now, and they're 2-9, and it feels like just a horrific. I'm trying to find the right word here. A horrific race to see who can get a higher draft pick at this point, Washington or the Giants. Both teams are 2-9, and they do play each other again, so hey, keep your eyes out for that one. That's going to be sad. I still don't think the Bears are a good team. Their offense is too wishy-washy. It can't just show up for the third quarter and hope to win games based off that. Especially if a team can figure out how to score on them in the first half. Like, let's say if they play a team that puts up like 15 points in the first half, or even 20. I mean, the Bears are going to come out and score 14 in the third quarter, and that'll be all you hear from them. So the Bears should get credit for this game. They played well, and they won it, but they need to figure out how to get more points and more than just the third quarter. And we're moving on to Denver at Buffalo. Buffalo wins this one 20-3 in a one-sided beatdown. Denver falls to 3-8. They've lost 2 straight, and Buffalo improves to 8-3, and it was won 2 straight. And let me tell you what, the Bills are looking a bit different now. The Bills' defense absolutely dominated the Broncos, as the Broncos' offense has one of their worst games in decades. It was that bad. The Broncos had 134 yards of total offense in this game. That's the lowest the Broncos have put up in a game since October 10th of 1992, when they put up 128 yards in a 34-3 loss to Washington on Monday Night Football. Think about that. Really think about that. Over 20 years ago, over 25 years ago, was the last time the Broncos offense did this badly in a game. Yeah, that'll give you something to think about. The Bills' defense played absolutely phenomenal in this game. Like I said, they only gave up 134 total yards. 82 of those yards were passing, which shows you how badly they frustrated Brandon Allen all day. They got 1 interception, 4 sacks, only allowed 3 points. I don't care who you're playing. That's great. I don't care if you're playing the worst team in the league. That is some great numbers the Bills' defense put up. Speaking of Brandon Allen, for the Broncos, went 10-25 for 82 yards. Like I said, an interception and 4 sacks. They just couldn't get anything going. Cortland Sutton couldn't get open. He was shut down by Tre'Davious White, who was making some serious noise as one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Philip Lindsay couldn't get anything going, and the Broncos offense just had nothing. They had nothing. And you know what? The Bills' offense wasn't great, but they did good in my opinion. Josh Allen played solid. He went 15 to 25 for 185 yards, 2 touchdowns. Had an interception. It was a really ugly interception, too. 1 interception early, got sacked once. 9 rushes for 56 yards. Not great from Allen, but good. It was serviceable. It's better than what we've gotten for most of the year. Devin Singletary continues to be a massive addition to this offense, especially these last few weeks. Devin Singletary went 21 rushes for 106 yards, continues to be a driving force in that backfield. And John Brown continues to stay hot, their number 1 wide receiver without a doubt. Had a monster game last week against Miami, and he continued it with a late touchdown in this one, a 34-yard touchdown pass in the fourth quarter that really, put an exclamation point on this one for the Bills. But if we're going to talk about the Bills' offense, we can't talk about it without talking about the ageless wonder that is Frank Gore, who passed Barry Sanders on the all-time rushing list. Frank Gore now sits as the 3rd all-time leading rusher in NFL history. And you know what? He's only 1,500 yards behind Walter Payton. He could get Walter Payton if he plays like 3 or 4 more years. He really could. So, huge congratulations to Frank Gore, future Hall of Famer. Man deserves it. He has gone through an extraordinary football career, 15 years. There was that time he tore his ACL twice in the same year. And dude overcame a lot. He really did. And he deserves every amount of praise and fame people want to throw at him. He deserves all of it. The Bills are playing like a different team now these last 2 weeks. We were waiting for them to beat up on the bad teams, and they finally have. They beat the tar out of Miami last week, and now they beat the tar out of a Denver Broncos defense that had been good for stretches, as long as you don't count the fourth quarter choking. They're good. And the Bills came in and made them look stupid and put up points on them. That's good. That's what you want to see from the Bills. And I'm starting to fall back in love with them. I really am. I need to see them beat a team with a winning record because I haven't done that all year before I finally jump back on the hype train. But this is what I always wanted to see from them, and I'm finally getting it, and I'm happy. But speaking of the Broncos real quick, with this bad of an offensive showing from Brandon Allen, you got to wonder how much longer they're going to wait before they put in Drew Lock, the rookie that they took in the 2nd round, ? I'm just saying, Drew Lock will not be far behind, and we might see him in a couple games. But all credit to the Bills. They deserve it. They're finally beating up the bad teams. And we're moving on to our next one. Tampa Bay at Atlanta. Kind of a surprising result. Tampa Bay wins 35-22. Tampa Bay improves to 4-7 on the year. And Atlanta snaps their 2-game winning streak, and the fun times are over in Atlanta as they fall to 3-8. Tampa Bay rides a nice day on offense as Atlanta goes back to being just bad and unwatchable. Tampa Bay, Chris Godwin set a career high in yards with 184 receiving yards in this one. Off of 7 catches, had 2 touchdown catches in this one. On a big day for Tampa Bay. They had some really nice moments, but the problem was those nice moments were mixed in with some badness from Jameis. Jameis Winston on his day went 18-28 for 313 yards, 3 touchdowns, but 2 really, really just tough to watch interceptions. I mean, I stood up out of my chair and I said, Jameis, what are you doing, man? Like, come on, dude. And you know what's really sad? They flashed a graphic in this game on the broadcast that said Jameis Winston is on pace to become the first quarterback in NFL history to average 300 passing yards a game and 2 or more interceptions in a game. That's not good. He is literally the best worst quarterback ever, or the worst best quarterback ever. I don't know. Either one could work here. Yeah. good with the bad for Jameis. It's just, oh my goodness. But the point is, this Tampa Bay offense, who we said can, work in clicks or work at times, they came in and took down a white-hot Atlanta defense who had played really great these last 2 weeks against Carolina and New Orleans, and Tampa Bay came in and made them look stupid. The Atlanta defense looked like they did, before their bye week. There were guys just wide open. There were massive chunk plays, long touchdowns, and guys just being wide open. That wasn't the Atlanta Falcons we had seen these last 2 weeks, and they just went away in this game. And speaking to the Tampa Bay defense, who has, been bad all year, they had a really great game. 6 sacks, got 2 turnovers in this one, and only allowed 22 points. And it felt like a lot of that came when, the game was out of reach. That's really good for them, by the way. That's really, really good that they only gave up 22 points because they were averaging like 31 a game. Oh, and by the way, Vita Vea, the Tampa Bay defensive lineman, the 6'4", 50-pound defensive lineman, got a touchdown in this one. Lined up in the backfield on offense and caught a touchdown pass. Ooh, you gotta love a big man touchdown pass. You gotta love it. So Tampa Bay had, what I'm getting at is they had a fun day despite the Jameis Winston interceptions, which is kind of becoming normal. They had a fun day, but for Atlanta, it was fun while it lasted, wasn't it? You had your fun, and now you came hurtling back to earth. Matt Ryan went 23 of 46 for 271 yards, the 1 interception, 6 sacks. He fumbled the ball twice, but only lost one of them. Matt Ryan just didn't have a good day. He got benched in the fourth quarter, if that tells you anything, as Matt Schaub came in for more cleanup duty this season. Poor Atlanta. I mean, they're playing for Dan Quinn at this point. There's no hope for any playoff spot or anything other than that. They're playing for Dan Quinn, and this was just a tough blow with a really bad Tampa Bay team who just came in and made them look stupid. But Tampa Bay, I mean, it's so frustrating because you see the glimpses with Jameis. You really do. You can really see something special, and then he'll do something like that horrific jump pass that he threw that got intercepted, where he just jumped and just kind of twisted his body and just threw it the wrong way, and you're thinking, my God, could you just stop doing stupid stuff for 5 minutes? Tampa Bay is going to have a serious decision to make, and I don't envy him. But they have to ask themselves, does the good Jameis do outweigh the bad? As he leads the league in turnovers since he came into it in 2015. Does it outweigh the bad? I really don't think so. Once again, Tampa Bay wins 35-22, and we're moving on to another blowout. I promise, this was not planned. We did this Friday, and this was not planned that we would put all these blowouts at once. Miami at Cleveland. Browns win 41-24. Cleveland improves to 5-6, and they're looking different now. And Miami falls to 2-9 as they've lost 2 straight, and the Browns have won 3 straight. The Browns look like what we all dreamed they would be this offseason in the first half of this game. They looked incredible. Oh my gosh. They came out firing on all cylinders. Everybody was involved. Odell Beckham Jr., Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Jarvis Landry. They all were getting massive chunk plays, and they were all getting touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. had a touchdown in the first half. Kareem Hunt had a touchdown in the first half. And Jarvis Landry had 2 touchdowns in the first half against his former team. You got to remember, Landry played for the Dolphins at one point and said, quote, that he felt his entire career would be in Miami. And now he's playing against them in Cleveland. Yeah, what a turn of events. The Browns were dominating every single facet of this game. And that's why they were leading 28-3 at halftime. But if you know anything about football, the most dangerous lead in all of sports is 28-3. And it was evident in this one because the Dolphins came storming back in the third quarter. Things changed in the second half. Here's why. The Browns took their foot off the gas. They got complacent and they came out flat. And the Dolphins didn't. In the third quarter, the Dolphins outscored the Browns 14-0 and cut the lead to 11 points going into the fourth quarter. Ryan Fitzmagic was getting frisky with it, and it was getting a bit nervous in Cleveland. But for the Browns, thankfully, they pulled it out in the fourth quarter. They did what in my opinion, a good competent team does, and when the chips are down in the fourth quarter, they finish strong. The Browns wake back up and scored 13 points in the fourth quarter to put the game out of reach and to give them a double-digit win. So, good for the Browns, am I right? They had a really good day on offense, despite coming out a bit flat in the second half. 467 total yards, 41 points. They spread the ball around. They didn't really screw themselves with turnovers. I know Baker had one interception, but that was like the first interception he's thrown in like 3 games. So he's playing really good football right now. This game shows how dangerous the Browns can be on offense. When everything is working, Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb are an unstoppable duo that could come out of the backfield at the same time. OBJ and Jarvis Landry are 2 of the best wide receiver duos in the entire league. And when Baker Mayfield isn't making bad decisions, he can be flat out dangerous. This was the Browns we dreamed about and that I waited months to watch, and now they're finally here. Oh, be still my beating heart. Here you go. You ready for some stats? Baker Mayfield went 24 or 34 for 327 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. Pretty good day. Nick Chubb, the running back, 21 rushes, 106 yards, 1 touchdown. Really good day. He's having a great year. Jarvis Landry, 10 catches, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great day. And like I mentioned, Odell Beckham had a touchdown in this one. That was his first touchdown since week 2 when they played against the Jets. So he's back in the fold. So the Browns had a really good day. But I really want to give a lot of credit to the Miami Dolphins. You know, you're down 28-3. You're down 25 points at halftime. And you didn't give up. I know a lot of teams that would give up. But with the season that they've had and how everybody's talked about them and how everybody's put them down, they didn't give up, and they made it interesting in the second half. So I think a lot of credit should go to Brian Flores, their head coach, the coaching staff, and those players. They came out and they didn't give up, and you got to give them credit for that. Speaking of the Dolphins, Ryan Fitzpatrick went 21-39 for 214 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, but 2 interceptions, 4 sacks. He also rushed 5 times for 45 yards and a rushing touchdown. That old man is frisky on his feet, I swear. He was actually the Dolphins' leading rusher, which is never a good thing when Ryan Fitzpatrick is your leading rusher. I'm just saying. All right, so the Browns, they're 5-6. They're 1 game below 500. They got a really easy remaining schedule. And that second wild card is definitely up for grabs. I'm telling y'all. It's gonna come down to, you know, these last couple weeks between the Steelers, Browns, and Raiders. You know, who's going to get it. But they're still very much alive, especially with the Browns playing the Steelers next week. That could go a long way in determining things. That second wild card is up for grabs, and you got to wonder who it's going to be. Once again, Browns win this one 41-24. And let's finally move on to a competitive close game. Huh? Does that sound nice? I think it does. Carolina at New Orleans. Game of the weekend? I don't think anybody could disagree. New Orleans wins this one 34-31. New Orleans improves to 9-2 on the season and won 2 straight. And Carolina, they're taking a tough loss in this one. Fall to 5-6 and have lost 3 straight. So, let's set the stage for you. It's tied 31-31. Just a couple minutes left in this one. Carolina gets the ball back and they're marching. In fact, they're into the New Orleans red zone. And they're right at about the 5-6 yard line. So they get stopped on 3rd and 3 from the 5. All right, after Kyle Allen dropped back to pass, who had a pretty good day in my opinion, Kyle Allen did. Dropped back to pass, threw it, falls incomplete. There was pass interference on the play. But the refs don't call it. Because you know how screwy they've been with pass interference all year long. So Carolina goes to the sideline, and Coach Ron Rivera, who still had a challenge flag, throws it. And because, you know, he's got nothing to lose here. If they don't get it, they don't get it. It's only a couple minutes left, but, you know, anything's possible. But here's the thing. It was blatant pass interference, and it should have been overturned. But we've seen way more egregious plays this season be reviewed and not overturned. Way more egregious ones than this one. So they're under there and they're reviewing it, and everybody's waiting for it. They've seen that it's blatant pass interference, but they know it's not going to get overturned because that's how the NFL is. And the refs come back and they go, okay, it was pass interference. First down, Carolina. And I was personally stunned. I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah, there have been way more egregious ones than that just don't get overturned. But it waits till a pivotal moment in a New Orleans Saints game, in a call that would go against the Saints, to overturn a pass interference call. Now that's just a terrible look for the league. It really is. That's an awful look. Now, it was blatant pass interference. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying the one time you overturn it, it goes against the Saints. Come on. So, all that aside, Carolina gets new life right at the goal line, and they get 3 straight shots and can't get anything from it. So they send out Joey Sly, who their field goal kicker, who had missed a couple kicks in this one, and they're telling him, listen, just go make this kick, put us up by 3, gives our defense a chance. He goes out there, it's a 28-yard field goal attempt, and he shanks it. It was a pretty awful shank, too. It was a rough one. I mean, it was from gimme position, and he still missed it. He missed 2 extra points on the day and that 1 field goal, so he missed 3 kicks. So that's a total of 5 points that he left out there for the Carolina Panthers. Saints get the ball back with 1 minute and 56 seconds left in the game, and they march 65 yards to get in field goal range. Will Lutz kicks the 33-yard field goal as time expires, and the Saints win it. And the Carolina Panthers lose a heartbreaker that they really needed. We talked about on Friday, the Panthers needed this game, and they just dropped the ball. Joey Sly, the field goal kicker for the Panthers, he had been good for most of the year, but when they needed him the most, he came up really short, and the Panthers worked out kickers yesterday, according to Coach Ron Rivera, and nothing of note has happened yet. Joey Sly hasn't been cut or anything, but, in a game that your team needs, and you miss a couple kicks that arguably cost you the game, that's usually how a kicker ends up in the unemployment line. It just is. The Panthers played this game like it was a do-or-die situation, and it was, in my opinion. They just came up short, and that's tough. They gave the Saints everything they could handle. Kyle Allen had a really good game, in my opinion. Went 23 of 36 for 256 yards, 3 touchdown passes, got sacked 4 times. Christian McCaffrey, 22 rushes for 64 yards and a touchdown, and he also caught 9 passes for 69 yards and a touchdown. So, 130 total yards and 2 touchdowns for McCaffrey. And DJ Moore, 6 catches, 126 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's not like the Panthers, left plays out there. They were trying their damnedest, and they were putting up points. It just wasn't enough. It was actually a shootout on both sides, in my opinion. Because, I just read off all these Carolina stats. The Saints put up some good numbers, too. Drew Brees went 30 of 39 for 311 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 sacks. Alvin Kamara finally looked like his old self again. 11 rushes for 54 yards and 9 catches for 48 yards. So Kamara got over 100 total yards, finally resembled his old self for the first time in weeks. Michael Thomas, the Saints' number 1, 10 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown. Both teams were leaving it all out there, and it just wasn't enough. But this was a really big win for the Saints. In a game where your defense didn't play particularly well, you got a big win against a division rival, and the NFC South is basically, all but guaranteed to go to them at this point. Carolina is the team with the second best record in that conference, and they're 5-6, and the Saints are, 9-2 at this point. I think a win on Thanksgiving would mathematically give them the NFC South, if I'm correct. But speaking to the Panthers now, this is the kind of loss that demoralizes a team and really just takes them out of things. When, you needed this game and you came up short. They got a kind of a soft schedule. They have Washington coming up next weekend, so that should be an easy win for them to rebound. But I think we can take Carolina out of the playoff conversation. Minnesota and Seattle, they're just way too far ahead in the wild cards, and Carolina, I just can't take them seriously after this loss. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that they're going to finish with a losing record. They could very well finish with 8 or 9 wins. They could. But you might need 10 or 11 to get a wild card in the NFC. It's that tough. But now speaking of the Saints, New Orleans is in good position for a first round bye. One of the top 2 seeds, especially with the fact that they play the 49ers in 2 weeks. That could be a massive game for playoff implications for both of those teams. But once again, Saints win a shootout and probably the best game of the weekend, 34-31 in New Orleans. And we're moving on. Back to blowouts. Yay. Oakland at the New York Jets. Jets win this one 34-3. Might be the most surprising result of the weekend. Jets improved to 4-7 and have won 3 straight. And Oakland falls to 6-5 and snaps a 3-game winning streak for them. The Jets just came out and bulldozed them. There was nothing the Raiders could have done in this one. It was surprising just because of how bad the Raiders looked in this game. This was probably their worst game of the year. Sam Darnold continues to stay hot in 3 straight games where he's just looked great and phenomenal. He scores 3 touchdowns in this one, 2 passing, 1 rush touchdown. It's very similar to how he got hot at the end of the season last year. I don't know what the deal is. It's just end of the season, Sam Darnold seems to get hot for whatever reason. And you know what? The Jets defense also played great. They allowed only 208 total yards. They shut down Josh Jacobs, made him a non-factor. They got 2 turnovers, 1 sack, and only 3 points. That's a really good day. Really good day for the Jets defense. In the first half, it wasn't a blowout. It was only 13-3 in favor of the Jets at the half. And you're thinking, okay, it's not an impossible comeback. The Raiders, they're a tough, gritty team, and it's on the road. Maybe they were overlooking them in the first half, and you know what? It's only a 10-point lead. It's not impossible to come back from. Then the third quarter started, and then it became impossible because the Jets went on a 21-0 run in the third quarter that put the game out of reach and allowed the Jets to score 34 points for the third week in a row. I don't ever remember a team doing what the Jets are doing right now, where they scored the same exact number of points in 3 straight weeks and win 3 straight weeks. It's really weird and coincidental. Derek Carr and the Raiders offense had a terrible day. Like I mentioned, Josh Jacobs just could not get going. And in my opinion, when you shut him down, the Raiders don't really have enough playmakers to will themselves to win. In fact, it was so bad that the Raiders benched Derek Carr with a couple minutes left in the third quarter. And in came Mike Glennon. Yeah. Haven't heard that name in a while, have you? Mike Glennon of Tampa Bay Buccaneer fame. Oh, boy. Let's look at stats real quick, because Sam Darnold went 20-29 for 315 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, got sacked once, 4 rushes for 16 yards, and a rushing touchdown. Like I said, he had a really good day. And that continues with the last 2 weeks. Sam Darnold is playing at a really good level. Derek Carr went 15-27 for 127 yards, 1 interception, 1 sack. Like I said, not that good of a day. And Josh Jacobs went I think he had 33 rush yards at the end of the game. I'm really starting to get worried about the Raiders. They've now played 2 straight weeks where they've been just horrifically sloppy, and their offensive line hasn't played well. The Bengals' defensive line got the better of the Raiders. Let that sink in for a moment. I know we didn't talk about that, but last week the Bengals' defensive line got the better of your offensive line. That's not good. And it happened again in this game. The Jets' defensive line got the better of the Raiders' O-line. We know the Raiders are young and they're a bit inexperienced at certain positions and how the rookies have really led the team. But is it just that they're a bit inexperienced and that they're overlooking these bad teams? Or is it something more? Because here's the thing. The Raiders' schedule is supposed to be easy enough where they could win like 9 games and potentially make a wild card. This was supposed to be a game that they won. And now they lost it, and now they're feeling embarrassed. And you know who they play next week in a game that's going to say a lot about both teams? The Kansas City Chiefs. That's a big game in that division. And the Raiders are going to have to show up and show that they're competent, because we haven't seen a competent Raiders team in about 2 weeks. I'm worried about them. I really am. But you know what? Let's give a lot of credit to the Jets. They're not going away. Have now scored 34 points in 3 weeks in a row, like I said, and they've been a completely different team since they lost to Miami way back when. They look just so different. It's like night and day. So credit to the Jets. And once again, Jets win a blowout 34-3, and we're moving on to Seattle at Philly. Seattle wins this one 17-9. Seattle improves to 9-2. They've won 4 straight. Philadelphia falls to 5-6, and they've lost 2 in a row. This is just a sloppy game. Oh my goodness, this was sloppy. The Seahawks survive just an ugly offensive game from both sides. So get this. The Eagles were missing wide receivers Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, and Nelson Aguilar. They were also missing running back Jordan Howard, right tackle Lane Johnson. That was before the game started. They were missing those guys. And then as the game starts, starting right guard Brandon Brooks leaves in the first quarter to deal with anxiety issues. Said he couldn't stop vomiting. So now the Eagles are just missing guys across the entire board on offense, and they played like it. That offense was hard to watch. Only scored 9 points, turned the ball over 5 times. The Eagles just could not get anything going at all. Carson Wentz was missing some big throws in this one, some easy throws. His wide receivers were running wrong routes and getting things miscommunicated. Just an ugly, ugly, ugly game. But to their credit, the Eagles' defense stepped up in a big way. They got 6 sacks in this one on Russell Wilson, forced 2 turnovers, and they limited the big plays. They slowed them down. They just couldn't capitalize from their offense. The Seahawks really couldn't get a passing game going at all. Russell Wilson finished 13-25 for 200 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Like I said, 6 sacks. But they got their running game going. Rashad Penny carried the Seahawks offense and ran all over the Eagles. 14 rushes for 129 yards and a touchdown. Really carried the day for the Seahawks offense. And you know what? The Seahawks are 6-0 on the road this year. They're the only team in the NFL that's still undefeated on the road. Talk about some road warriors. You're talking about the Seattle Seahawks, baby. The Eagles are just so hurt, it's almost impossible to get a good read on them. There were dropped passes, there were missed throws. It's just all bad. And the Seahawks look sloppy, but they gutted out a win and found a way to win. Just protect Russell Wilson better, and I think they'll be better. Don't give up 6 sacks every week. But I want to take a second and talk about the Eagles, because I know the Seahawks are better. It was on the road. It was an early 1 o'clock Eastern game. This West Coast team usually doesn't do well in those situations. I want to take a second and talk about the Eagles. If this was any other team in any other division, I would say the Eagles are done. I would say their season's over. They're 5-6. They've got too many injuries. They can't do it. But since they play in the worst division in football this year, the NFC East, the Eagles are still very much alive for a playoff spot. Especially with the Cowboys just continuing to shoot themselves in the foot. The Eagles are only 1 game back from Dallas. That's not good. And you know what? The Eagles have a really easy schedule coming up. You know what their remaining games are? At Miami. Home versus the Giants. At Washington. Home versus Dallas. At Giants. At New York Giants. That's their last 5 games. 4 of those final 5 are against teams that have 2 wins. That is the absolute definition of a cakewalk. Like I said, if it was any other team, I would say the Eagles season is done. But because it's the NFC East, they're still in it. And you know what? The The NFC East might come down to the last week of the season to determine who wins it. It really might. Once again, Seahawks win a sloppy one. There really wasn't a lot to talk about. Just a lot of sloppy, unwatchable football that I wouldn't wish my worst enemy to have to subjugate themselves to. It was just a lot of unwatchable football. Once again, Seahawks win this one. I have to look at the score again. 17-9. And we're moving on to another sloppy game. Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. Yay. But there's more to talk about in this one, I promise. Pittsburgh wins this one 16-10. Pittsburgh improves to 6-5 on the year. And they're back in that wild card spot. If the season ended right now, the Steelers are in the playoffs, baby. And Cincinnati falls to 0-11. And I don't know if you've known this, but the Bengals have lost 11 straight games. I don't know how to tell you this. All right, so let's set the stage. The game starts, and Mason Rudolph looks absolutely terrible. He just looks atrocious, and the Steelers are flat as a result. They can't get anything going on offense. At halftime, Mason Rudolph's stat line has completed 8 out of 16 passes, so 50%, for 85 yards, 1 interception, and 1 sack. It was just awful bad football. And you know what? The Steelers are trailing at the half. They're down 7-3 to the Bengals on the road. So an upset's brewing in Cincinnati. And Mike Tomlin, the Steelers head coach, is thinking, okay, I got to do something. I got to get this team a spark. What do I do? He turns to Devlin the Duck Hodges, the third-string rookie quarterback, who got a win in Los Angeles against the Chargers on Sunday Night Football a couple weeks ago. He says, Duck, you're going to start the second half. Duck comes out to start the second half. And you know what Devlin Duck Hodges does? He throws a 79-yard touchdown pass to James Washington to get the Steelers back in front. I'm hyping this kid up way too much. Steelers outscore the Bengals 13-3 in the second half thanks to Devlin Hodges. And the Steelers defense once again saved the day for the team. All joking aside about Hodges. They only gave up 10 points, 244 total yards of offense they gave up, 2 turnovers, and they got 4 sacks in this one, as they were able to stave off the Cincinnati upset for one more week. And you know what? Speaking of Duck, here's the stat line. You ready for it? You ready to get your socks blown off? 5 out of 11 in passing. Yeah, I know. Sexy, am I right? For 118 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 sacks. So, not knock your socks off great, but it's not dog trash bad. It's somewhere in the middle. It's a gray area. Speaking of the Bengals real quick, Ryan Finley did more of the same for that offense. He went 12 of 26 for 192 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 sacks. It feels like the same exact stat line we've seen every single week since Ryan Finley took over as the starter. And at least, you know, Taj Boyd, their wide receiver, had a nice stat line. 5 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. So, you know, at least there's that for the Bengals. Their offense was very meh. After the quarterback change and after the Steelers took the lead, you know, nothing really of note happened outside of that during the game. But after the game is what's really important. Because, you know, Mason Rudolph really hasn't played too well this season. There's nothing that Mason Rudolph has done to say that he should be the starting guy over Duck Hodges. But it's not saying that Duck Hodges is that much better of a quarterback than Mason Rudolph, if you catch my drift. I just think he gives them a slightly better chance to win. And after the game, Mike Tomlin said he wasn't going to name a starting quarterback and that he's thinking about what to do. Well, he's already announced that that Devlin Duck Hodges will be the starting quarterback for the Steelers against the Browns next week, and that it's just a 1-week thing. We're just going to test it out to see how it goes. So at least the Steelers are trying to, you know, keep pace in the playoff hunt. But for the Bengals, we know Ryan Finley isn't the best quarterback on that roster. We know that. We can tell by watching it. And, you know, I questioned on Friday whether the Bengals are tanking because of this, that they're starting Ryan Finley over Andy Dalton. Well, you know what? Monday comes and head coach Zach Taylor announces they're going back to Andy Dalton at quarterback. Okay. That just reeks of terrible coaching, but okay, go for it, buddy. And what I think is really hilarious is that the moment Andy Dalton has been announced as the starting quarterback again, all of a sudden all the reports start coming in. Oh, AJ Green should be available to go for the Bengals this weekend after not being able to play all season long. I just think that's hilarious. Poor man was waiting for them to bench Ryan Finley so he could play with Dalton again. Oh, that's sad. Once again, Pittsburgh wins this one 16-10, and we're gonna have new quarterbacks for each of these teams next week. Hooray! So that's it for the early games, and we're getting into the first of our late games. And guess what? More blowouts! Hooray! Jacksonville at Tennessee, people. Titans win this one 42-20. Oh my gosh! Go Titans! Tennessee improves to 6-5 on the year. They've won 2 straight now. And Jacksonville falls to 4-7 and have lost 3 straight. And you know what? I think it's time we say that the Jacksonville Jaguars season is over. It's over, people. We can call it now. They're dead in the water. Derrick Henry ran all over the Jags in this one as Titans put them down for a dirt nap. That's literally what it says in my notes verbatim. Here's the thing. The Titans, you know what? It was kind of a close game in the first half. It wasn't too much of a blowout going into the third quarter, but the Titans just suddenly flipped the switch in the third quarter. Here's what they did. The Titans scored 4 touchdowns over 6 offensive plays in the third quarter. Let that sink in for a moment. 4 touchdowns over 6 offensive plays. The Titans are not a pushover on offense anymore. They're a completely different team since Ryan Tannehill became the starter. In fact, they're 4-1 since Ryan Tannehill became the starter. That's really great for them. The Titans outscored Jacksonville 35-17 in the second half. Oh, that just makes you shudder, don't it? Ryan Tannehill, speaking to him now, went 14 of 18 for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 sack. He also rushed 7 times for 40 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill had 4 touchdowns on the day, people. Oh my goodness. Derrick Henry had a monster day in this one. 19 rush attempts for 159 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. A.J. Brown, I guess he's their number 1 wide receiver, A.J. Brown. 4 catches for 135 yards and 1 touchdown. Good God, Jacksonville. Stop somebody. Jacksonville just had no answers on either side of the ball. They really didn't. Their defense was getting run over relentlessly by Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill. And their offense really didn't get anything going until the game became a blowout and the Titans took their foot off the gas. Nick Foles went 32 of 48 for 272 yards and got sacked 3 times. Most of the Jags' damage came from Leonard Fournette, who went 24 rush attempts for 97 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Also caught 9 passes for 62 yards. But like I said, most of that came when the game was a blowout. They were only able to move the ball when it became a blowout. You know, this is now the second straight week where nothing has been generated from the Nick Foles offense when it matters. They got nothing last week against the Colts, and now they got really nothing this week when it mattered against the Titans. I know the Titans are a better defense. I'm just saying, there's still nothing. They paid him a lot of money to come in and be a quarterback that can come in and help them get back to the playoffs, and they're sitting here 4-7 right now. And 2 of those losses are with him as their quarterback. The Titans' running game is absolutely scary. They had 33 rush attempts for 219 yards and 4 touchdowns. Their longest run of the day was 74 yards from Derrick Henry, who, you got to find that highlight. It was crazy, man. He's scary. They can also beat you through the air. They had the 65-yard touchdown pass to A.J. Brown. So look out for the Titans, people. They're not a pushover, and they're going to make some serious noise in the AFC South. I think they play the Texans twice over the next 2 weeks. Not the next coming 2 weeks, but over the final 5 weeks, they play them twice. Titans can make some noise here. They're very much alive, and they're not a pushover anymore. But speaking of the Jags real quick, they're dead in the water, and they got no hope of nothing. They're 4-7 with 5 weeks to go. Why not put back in Gardner Minshew? You got nothing to lose. You really don't. You put the rookie back in. He's had some time to sit on the bench and, observe from the sidelines. Maybe he's learned a couple things. It comes down to the last 2 or 3 weeks of the season. There is no harm in putting in Gardner Minshew. There really ain't. You got nothing to play for. Once again, Titans win this one 42-20, and we're moving on to the game that everybody has watched over the weekend. I can guarantee it, because it set a bunch of high watermarks for television viewership, if you've been paying attention to ratings. Dallas at New England. Yay. New England wins this one 13-9. New England improves to 10-1 on the season. And they've won 2 straight, and Dallas falls to 6-5, and they're back in the losing section. I almost said they've lost 3 straight. I don't know why. It just feels like it. The Pats win a rain-soaked slop fest as the Cowboys doom themselves. Oh, this feels like normal, don't it? The play of the game in this one came early on, according to Bill Belichick. So, it was the play of the game. The blocked punt by New England that set up the game's lone touchdown from Tom Brady. That was a big one. It really was. As the rest of the game just descended into field goal kicking and field position swapping. In fact, that touchdown was N'Keal Harry's, the Pats wide receiver's first touchdown of the year, so that had to feel good for him. But it was just a lot of sloppy game. The weather heavily impacted the game on this one, and neither offense could really get anything going outside of that one touchdown by New England. Get this. Both teams combined to go 5 out of 29 on 3rd and 4th downs in this game. That's how bad the offense is played. And, people want to say that, the Cowboys' number one offense really isn't that good if they couldn't move the ball. Did you watch the game? It was so hard in that rain and wind and cold. Nobody could get anything going. And I'm not going to fault either side or really dig into why they couldn't move the ball, because the weather just hindered everything so much. But what I will say is, if you were watching the game, didn't it feel like the Cowboys seemed genuinely unprepared for rain? Like, do they not have weather forecasts in Frisco, Texas? Everybody and their great-grandmother knew this was going to be a rainy-soaked game for the entire week. Everybody except for the Cowboys, who seemed genuinely unprepared. Like, for instance, with the kickoff situation. There was a situation late in the game where the Cowboys were getting the ball back from New England, and Troy Aikman, the former Cowboy quarterback, who I love it when he gets critical on the Cowboys. It makes me happy. He's saying in the booth, the wind is going to affect the kickoff. They need to scoot up so they can field this kick. And the ball gets kicked, and the Cowboys don't scoot up 1 inch. They have to run up to catch the ball, and it gets muffed by Tony Pollard, and thankfully he recovers it. But, that's just common sense. The wind's blowing towards the ball, and you don't move up to catch it. That just reflects on coaching, in my opinion. How nobody seemed to be prepared for the wind. I was almost going to say the wind. The wind and the rain. Like how Dak Prescott had to put on a glove in the second quarter. Like he didn't know it was going to rain. Did nobody think throughout the week to maybe practice with some wet footballs at practice? I know Frisco, Texas is not the same kind of weather environment as New England. I'm just saying. Practice, situationally, it just seems like they didn't do any of that this week. Now, the Cowboys had their chances. There was that big pass play to Randall Cobb late in the game that set up the Cowboys deep in New England territory. They got into the red zone, which was the farthest they had gotten all game long. And they take a couple desperation shots at the end zone, and they don't get anything. It goes to 4th down. And it's decision time. You either kick the field goal and make it a 4-point game, or you go for it and try to make it a tie game, because if you score a touchdown and kick the extra point, that's a tie game. But Jason Garrett, being the ultra-conservative that he is, decides to kick the field goal, and that was, in my opinion, reason number 95,462 why he should not be the head coach. How do you not go for it? Then New England gets the ball back. They don't do anything with it. Dallas gets the ball back. They don't do anything with it. New England gets the ball back, wastes some more time, gives the ball back to Dallas, who has one more second, wastes it. That's game. A lot of, coaching miscues on the part of Dallas, just like every week, is probably the reason why they lost a winnable game because, the weather really hampered New England and they didn't play their best football. Tom Brady went 13 of 37 for 190 yards, a touchdown, 2 sacks. Dak Prescott went 19 of 33 for 214 yards and 1 interception. Excluding the 1 touchdown, they played about the same. Both teams rushed for about the same. New England had like 109 rushing yards. Dallas had 101 rushing yards. So it's not like, anything, no team really outclassed the other except for in the margins and special teams that really make the difference. New England's one of the best special teams in the entire league, and Dallas is, believe it or not, they're one of the worst in almost every special teams category. Kick return, punt return, you name it. Dallas is either dead last or in the bottom 3. It's the little things in a game like this where the weather hampers both teams. It's the little things that'll get you a win. And Bill Belichick has preached that for 20 years, and it's why the Patriots are always so good. And Jason Garrett doesn't do that, and it's one of the reasons why the Cowboys seem to always lose these close games against good teams. Because he gets out-coached, plain and simple. Now, I'm not going to sit here and rant about Jason Garrett being a terrible coach. I've done that for way too much time on this podcast to begin with. We can only pray he gets fired and the Cowboys get better. That's all we can really pray for. But I think the end result is, I think we're coming to terms with the fact that the Cowboys can't beat a good team. Now that the Eagles are below 500, the Cowboys haven't beat a team with a winning record all season long. They can beat up the bad ones, they just can't beat the good ones. And that's sad because the talent Dallas has, they have no reason to be 6-5. They have one of the most talented rosters in the entire league. They have a roster that could easily win 10 to 12 games a year. But they are seriously staring down the barrel of an 8 or 9 and 7 win season because of their head coach. All credit to the Patriots. They got a tremendous coaching staff and they have talent on their roster. It was ugly, and they probably won't look back fondly on this game, but they got to win, and that's all that matters for the Patriots. Once again, New England wins this one 13-9, and we're moving on to Sunday Night Football. Excuse me. Green Bay at San Francisco. San Francisco wins this one 37-8. Ooh, doggy. San Francisco improves to 10-1, and they're the only other 10-win team in the NFL right now, and they've won 2 straight and are looking like them old selves again. Green Bay falls to 8-3, and this was just a rough night for Green Bay. 49ers defense just shows how dominant it can be and forces Rodgers into one of the worst games of his illustrious Hall of Fame career. So, early on in this one, Packers right tackle Ryan Bulaga leaves the game early with an injury. He doesn't return. It's one of the reasons why the 49ers defensive line had a tremendous night to begin with. Big play early in the game on the first drive. Rodgers gets sacked, loses the football. 49ers recover in their red zone and score on the next play for a touchdown. And that was just basically that all night long for the 49ers. It was just defensive domination at its finest for them. Let's see here. 5 sacks, one turnover, the strip sack I just mentioned, and allowed 198 total yards. Yeah, I know. Rodgers' final stat line, Aaron Rodgers, 20 of 33 for 104 passing yards. 104. He got 1 touchdown, sacked 5 times, and the fumble. Oh, it's just, oh my goodness. This was worse than that LA Charger game from the Packers. It was just awful. Their defense just shut them down, and you know what? It was a big lead at half. What was it, 20-3 at halftime? There was just more of it in the second half. The 49ers just had no answers at all for this one. And you know what? The 49ers offense had a really great day too. 2 separate touchdown passes go for more than 40 yards as Jimmy Garoppolo continues to shine. You know, he's not just a game manager, people. He can really sling it if he wants to. Jimmy Garoppolo went 14 of 20 for 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, got sacked twice. 3 times, my bad. And George Kittle, his first game back in like 2 or 3 weeks, he is a difference maker. That offense is completely different when George Kittle is in there. 6 catches, 129 yards, and a touchdown. Their passing game is more aerodynamic, and their run blocking is a lot better. You notice their run game kind of disappeared a little bit when George Kittle wasn't there. And when he was in there last night, it looked like its old self with his run blocking. I think George Kittle might be the best tight end in football. Chris Collinsworth said it during the broadcast, in every facet of the game. Passing, catching, running, blocking. He just exceeds at all of what he's asked to do. I think he might be the best tight end in football right now. I really do. And that's saying a lot because Travis Kelce is a hell of a tight end in Kansas City. The 49ers are just different with Kittle on the field. They're just so different. And this 49ers team is really showing just how dangerous they can be. They're not just a defensive team. Their offense is potent and can beat you. This Packers defense, while it has taken a step back from what it was in the first half of the season, they're no pushover. They're right around average, but they looked just terribly bad in this game. They looked outmatched and outgunned. The Packers couldn't get anything going on offense at all. Just had no answers and felt like they'd taken a step back in the second half of the season, including that LA Charger game. We were ready to anoint the Packers, as one of the best teams in the NFC for the first half of the season. They really haven't felt like it in the second half. They just haven't. I think that, the 49ers are the best team in the NFC. I think we can all agree on that. Then you can take your pick for the second best. Maybe it's actually Seattle or New Orleans. I think the Packers are right at around that fourth spot in the NFC of like the fourth best team in the conference, which isn't a terrible thing. They still have a really great shot at winning their division. But at worst, I still think they make the playoffs. They laid a lot of groundwork early, but maybe they just aren't as good as we thought they were. That when they're playing a really great team like the 49ers, they just can't match up. That's not a terrible thing. 49ers are 10-1 for a reason. They're a great team. But once again, we're going to move on to the last game Monday Night Football here real quick. But once again, San Francisco wins 37-8. And we're going to talk about the 49ers' upcoming opponent this weekend, the Baltimore Ravens. Oh, yeah, the Ravens play the 49ers this weekend, and it's going to be fantastic. So let's get into Monday Night Football real quick. Baltimore at the Los Angeles Rams. Baltimore wins another blowout. It was like the 7th blowout this weekend. Baltimore wins 45-6. Baltimore improves to 9-2, and the Rams fall to 6-5. Lamar Action Jackson throws for 5 touchdowns as the Ravens make a statement in Los Angeles. Oh my goodness, this was just ugly to watch for the Rams. There was no hope. There was no chance. There was only Lamar. The Ravens become the 4th team in the 21st century to score touchdowns on its first 6 drives in a game. That should tell you how efficiently and how dangerous and how potent this offense is playing right now. 6 drives, 6 touchdowns against a really good defense that was averaging 11 points a game coming into this one. The Ravens are the best offense in the NFL, and they're the best team in the NFL right now. And you know what? The Ravens become the first team in NFL history to beat last year's Super Bowl teams by 17 or more points the next season. Think about that. In the history of the NFL, ever since Super Bowl started, 53 years ago, is that what number we're on? 53, 54? No team has ever played those 2 teams that were in the Super Bowl the previous year and beaten them as badly as the Ravens have this year. That's, I want to say insane, I want to say scary, but those adjectives feel like they don't do it justice. This is some all-time stuff we're seeing from the Ravens, and it should terrify everybody. Let me read you the stat line for this one. You ready? Lamar Jackson, 15 of 20 for 169 yards, 5 passing touchdowns. 2 to Hollywood Brown, 2 to Willie Snead, 1 to Mark Ingram. And you know what? He honestly could have had 6 because he could have had a rushing touchdown, but he tripped right before the end zone. 8 rushes for 95 yards. Mark Ingram, their all-world running back who shows he's still got a lot left in the tank. 15 rushes, 111 yards, a touchdown, 1 catch for 7 yards and a touchdown. The Ravens are scary, and I don't know how you beat them. I really don't. Because, you would argue that maybe you get physical on defense with them, but you know what? The Patriots and Seahawks are physical on defense, and they got trucked by this Ravens offense. So I don't know how you beat them. And the scary part is it's not just offense. Their defense is playing well. They held this Rams offense to 6 points. Marcus Peters, who played for the Rams and got traded to the Ravens earlier in the season, got an interception on Jared Goff in this game. Nice little revenge for Marcus Peters. This Ravens defense is playing well too. They gave up 221 total yards, got 2 turnovers, 2 sacks, and 6 points, like I just said. The Ravens are the complete package in every facet. There is no weak point. I don't know how you attack this team. Their offense is great. There was an injury on their offensive line earlier in this game, but that didn't seem to hamper them at all. But I guess that would be something to keep an eye on going forward. Their offense is the best in the NFL. Their defense is getting better week to week. And you're thinking, well, maybe if they had some special teams miscues, Justin Tucker is one of the most accurate field goal kickers in the history of the NFL. There is no weak point. There is nothing that I can point to and say, this is how you beat them. Because I don't know if you can beat them. Now, they're going to lose games. I don't think they're going to roll into the playoffs as a 14-2 team. But God, they could. They really could. They're doing such crazy stuff that it feels like they're a college football team. You know why they feel like a college football team? Because their starting quarterback is getting to sit on the bench in the fourth quarter because they're blowing so many teams out. This is like the 4th time this season where Lamar Jackson has sat out basically the entire fourth quarter because he did so much and they're up by so many. That stuff you see in college football when Alabama plays. You don't see that in the NFL. And it's so fun to watch. This Ravens team is just electric. They're becoming must-watch television every time they're on. They're like the Kansas City Chiefs from last year when Patrick Mahomes was lighting the skies up. If the Ravens are on TV, you have to watch. It is becoming mandatory appointment television. I'm in love with the Ravens and everything they do, and I just want to sit here and sing praises about them and how they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm in love with this Ravens team so much. But I want to talk about the Rams real quick. They fall to 6-5, and they got outclassed. I'm going to be 100% honest. That defense had no answers, and that defense was supposed to be a bit stout, especially with Aaron Donald up the middle. I was expecting the Ravens to win, and you know what? I was expecting them to win by double digits even. I wasn't expecting them to beat them that badly, to where the running game was getting like 6 or 7 yard run plays in the first half. I wasn't expecting that level of domination. I really wasn't. Speaking of Jared Goff real quick, 26 of 37, 212 yards, 2 interceptions, 2 sacks. It's just, this Rams team got outclassed, plain and simple, on both sides of the football. And I've been saying it all year. They're a team in transition, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. Maybe they finish 8-8, or hell, even 9-7, but that's their ceiling. They're not making the playoffs. But back to the Ravens for one quick second. I don't know who stops them, who can get a win, because their 2 losses on the year are against Cleveland and Kansas City. And that was back when the Ravens were still figuring things out early in the season. I don't know who beats this team, and I don't know how you even begin to slow them down. So this Sunday when they play the 49ers, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot to understanding both teams and figuring out how to stop and beat both of them. So that's it for our recap portion. I know I went through a couple of those later games a little quicker, but I spent a little too much time on the early ones, so it all evens out. So I want to get into these previews real quick. We got 3 of them, and we're just going to hammer through them real quick. So first one up on Thanksgiving. I think this one's at it's either noon or 1, I think. The annual Detroit Lions game, who, if you didn't know, the Lions initially were the first team to do an annual Thanksgiving game way before Dallas did it. So, you know, it's a big thing for the people of Detroit, you know. It's kind of like the one thing they have left with this terrible Lions team right now. So it's Chicago Bears at Detroit Lions, so it's a little NFC North Division rivalry game. Both teams coming in well below expectations. The Lions team without Matthew Stafford is downright unwatchable. Jeff Driscoll made the Washington defense look good. That should tell you all you need to know. You go in there and you blow it to a 2, at the time, a 1-win team. That tells you all you need to know, in my opinion, about this Detroit Lions football team. And you know what? And we talked a lot about, remember early on, about how the Bears have that weird thing where they score points in the third quarter but can't do it in the other portions of the game. It doesn't make any sense in the world. But maybe the Bears score more points in this one. You know, these two teams played a couple of weeks ago, and, you know, Jeff Driscoll almost brought the Lions back in that one. That was in Chicago. This one's in Ford Field. So who knows? The Bears couldn't exactly score on this bad Lions defense then, but maybe they do now. Especially in the third quarter. I still don't understand that. It doesn't make any sense. Really not a lot to talk about with this game. You know what? This is the kind of game that if you're having your Thanksgiving meal early in the day, like right around early afternoon, this is the game that you would pass out during with a food coma. Like, it's probably going to be really boring. The final score is probably going to be like 24 to like 13 or something like that. Hell, even 17-6. I could really see that too. But this is the kind of game where you eat your turkey in the first quarter and you're asleep by halftime. It's going to be that kind of snooze fest. And that's why I'm going to ask the NFL, please flex this game out of national television. I know Lions fans really want this, and it's like the only thing they have left. But the rest of us don't have to suffer because of them. Please flex this out. Please. I'm taking the Bears to win this one. I've been hyping up the Lions all season long with Stafford, but you lose to Washington. I can't respect you anymore. You lose to Washington. You get out of here. All right, moving on to the mid-afternoon game. This one's kicking off at like 4, I think. 3 or 4. It's probably the best game of the day, the annual Cowboy game on Thanksgiving. Buffalo at Dallas. So this game is going to tell us a lot about both these teams. Neither team has beaten an opponent above 500 all year long. I think the Bills have only played like one opponent above 500, and that was the Patriots. If I'm remembering the schedule correctly. No, they played the Eagles too, when the Eagles were above 500, but they lost that too. So neither team has beaten an opponent above 500. So something's got to give in this game because both teams are above 500. The Bills are catching fire at the right time. This is right when you want to catch fire as a team, right around Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving. So you can go into the playoffs hot. The Bills are finally figuring themselves out. They're scoring points. They're beating up the bad teams. Now it's time to beat up a good team. This Cowboys defense is weak, and they're weak against the run. So heavy doses of Devin Singletary and Josh Allen could get the job done for the Bills. And you know what? For the Cowboys, you know, if you want to beat this Bills team, you got to force them to throw. Force them to beat you with John Brown and Cole Beasley. That's their top receivers. I like John Brown, but if you're relying on Cole Beasley to be a number 2, you're going to have a bad time. And for the Bills, Stephon Gilmore in the Patriots game shut down Amari Cooper and made him an absolute non-factor. Tre'Davious White in that Bills secondary is no pushover, and I have a feeling he's going to give Amari Cooper some fits. I don't think he'll, force him to be absolutely quiet like Gilmore did, but just keep an eye on that. I think that'll be a matchup to watch, Tre'Davious White versus Amari Cooper throughout the game. And I really think the Cowboys' offense is going to bounce back. They're not going to look as bad as they did against the Patriots. The rain really forced that to be awful. They're in a dome. It's in Thanksgiving. The Cowboys' offense should resemble what it was, but this Bills defense is no pushover now. They can sack the quarterback, and they're really good against the pass. So it'll be interesting to see, which side gets an advantage. The Cowboys' offense or Bills' defense. So the Cowboys really need this game. They're 6-5. They're just a game up on the Eagles, who have a soft schedule remaining. The Cowboys play, they play this game against the Bills, then they have the Bears in Chicago and the Rams in Dallas coming up. Those aren't, world beaters, but it's a lot tougher than the Eagles' schedule. If the Cowboys stumble here, it's bad news. If you lose this nationally televised game to a Bills team that is not beating a good team all year long, those calls for Jason Garrett to get fired become nucleic as you fall to 6-6. I'm going to take the Cowboys to win this one. I just think they have too many offensive weapons, and I think it's easier to bet on offense in the NFL than it is to bet on defense. On paper, though, this should be a close game. I really think the Bills are going to hang in there and make this a tight one in the fourth quarter. But I think Dak Prescott just makes enough plays and they come out on top. But I really wouldn't be stunned if the Bills win. They're catching fire right now, and they're not a pushover like they were earlier in the season, where they struggled to, beat bad teams and can't win a good game. So those are the first two games. Now we go to the last one, 8 o'clock Eastern, and it's the Sunday Night Football crew. So we get Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth on Thanksgiving. Who doesn't love that? Oh, I love those guys. So, while the rest of your family is passed out from food, and if you're still somehow semi-awake, stirring from your food coma, you get to be entertained at 8 o'clock Eastern by New Orleans at Atlanta. A nice little NFC South rivalry. So, what version of the Falcons are we going to get? Are we going to get the one that bullied the Saints in New Orleans and bullied the Carolina Panthers in Carolina and whose defense looked great? Or are we going to get the ones that laid an egg against Tampa Bay? It's so interesting because, the Falcons are literally only playing for Dan Quinn. That's all they're playing for anymore. And what better way to give Dan Quinn a gift than on Thanksgiving sweeping the New Orleans Saints? I'm just saying it would. I think that would be the ultimate gift the Falcons could give him. But it's not just on defense that the Falcons need to step it up. Their offense played bad against Tampa Bay. In fact, their offense played so bad against Tampa Bay, it made the Tampa Bay defense look good. That's not good at all. If you make that terrible defense look good. They'll have to step it up against the Saints defense that, gave up 31 points against Carolina. Carolina isn't an offense that can score a lot, so that was kind of eye-opening a little bit. But in this game, like I mentioned earlier when I talked about the Saints, if I'm remembering correctly, I think they could either mathematically lock up the NFC South with a win or a win next weekend. Because, they're already at 9 wins, and if you go to 10 wins in that division, I think that's way more than enough. I'm taking the Saints in this one. I just think that they're a much better team, and they were a better team when they played the Falcons earlier. But you just don't know what you're getting with Atlanta. Maybe they come out and play inspired in a big primetime game on Thanksgiving, or maybe they just lay an egg again, like they have for most of the year. But I'm taking the Saints. It's a safe bet, and that's what we're riding with. So, that's the entire podcast. I know I crammed a lot in there, and I know I sped over a couple things, but you know what? We got to everything, and that's all that really matters, and maybe we had some fun. So, next time we talk, it will be Friday. We're going to recap the 3 games we just talked about, and then we'll preview the rest of Week 13. I know, we're already at Week 13, people. Time flies so fast. Including that massive matchup between the 49ers and Ravens on Sunday, which could very well be a Super Bowl preview, people. So that to look forward to. And I hope everybody has a happy and safe Thanksgiving and enjoy some football with some turkey. That's not too much to ask for. All right. See everybody Friday. Bye.